Rob's there.
Good morning, everyone. Give us 1 second here. We're going to get started in just a moment. Still letting some people in, so give me just a second here. All right, good morning. I'm Wesley Stefanik. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Delaware Association of Realtors. Thank you all for joining us today for our June Hot Topic session. This month, we take a closer look at the Housing Choice Voucher Program, or what many people know it as Section 8. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. The chat box is open, so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in there. Everybody will be muted, but you can communicate via the chat box. The session is also being recorded for later reference, and you'll be able to find that at delawarerealtor.com. Just look for the video library. I do want to let everyone know that our next Hot Topic session will be in August, and we'll be joined by representatives from the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, who will be discussing the Live, Love Delaware program. So with that, let's get started for today. So I'm happy to have joining with me is Chris Whaley, the Director of Housing Management for the Delaware State Housing Authority, and he'll be talking about the Housing Choice Voucher Program. I think I can be direct in saying that the Housing Choice Voucher Program has a stigma, and I hope today's session is to educate everyone on what the program really is and clear up some of the misconceptions that exist about the program. But I do want to note, and I think it is important to note, that this is not set up as some sort of debate or time to, comment badly about the program. This is all just about the facts. I don't have any property owners or managers here that utilize the program, so I don't have their opinions on how it works. So I just want to keep that in mind for everybody. I believe information shared today could be useful for all of you personally if you rent properties, or to assist your clients if they're interested in renting theirs. We have an affordable housing crisis in Delaware, and more Housing Choice Voucher opportunities provided to prospective tenants in Delaware could help that situation. So let's get started. Chris, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Hi, I'm Chris Whaley. I'm the Director of Housing Management with the Delaware State Housing Authority for the next 17 days. I retire at the end of this month, so this is probably one of my last presentations. I do see one of my colleagues online, Rob Rizzo, who pretty much does the same job at the Newcastle County Department of Community Development and Housing. And I've got a slide presentation. And Wes, if any questions come in, please let me know. I'm going to concentrate on the slide presentation. Yep. And I'm going to try to share my screen. Accompanying me is the person that will be taking over the position. Her name is Doris Hall. Doris is a longtime DSHA employee, and I know that she will be able to improve everything that we've got going on here. So let's start with the presentation. And I need the host to disable the participating screen sharing.
Yep, you got it. There you
go. Okay. So does everybody see the slides?
Yep, good to go.
Okay. That's a picture of our offices here on the green in Dover. Subsidized housing in Delaware takes many different faces and different looks. A lot of people say, oh, Section 8 is everything. It's not true. Section 8 is only a program word for just a couple of different programs. But subsidized housing in Delaware is HUD, public, and Indian housing, which encompasses public housing and the Section 8, what we call Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is a tenant-based assistance program. We have the HUD multifamily program. There are apartment complexes that are owned by either for-profit or nonprofit owners that have HUD subsidy tied to the units. One of the biggest in Delaware is Leon N. Weiner and Associates, and managed by their subsidiary Arbor Management. But there are others out there that have nonprofit owners, but they have tenant-based federal assistance. Then we have low-income housing tax credits. This has low-income housing tax credits do not have any housing assistance tied to them. What they do have are tax credits which are funded through the IRS to spur private investment into subsidized, not subsidized, but unsubsidized affordable housing. What happens is that a developer will apply for tax credits. If they get the tax credits, they can sell them through a syndication. The proceeds go to help reduce the construction costs, which in addition, reduce the amount of debt service. And since the price of the apartments is linked to the debt service, they can usually offer rents that are anywhere from $100 to $200 lower than other rents in the area. Then most people don't realize this, but the USDA has a hand in subsidized housing through the Rural Development Housing Program. You see most of these down in Kent and Sussex counties, but they are apartment complexes that have their own type of subsidy through the USDA, and some of them also accept vouchers for unsubsidized units. Then we have rapid rehousing programs, and these are basically for the homeless, and they're basically done through the Delaware Housing Coalition, where they have a process of tracking the homeless, and they have certain programs that they can rehouse them and provide temporary assistance for a year's period or so. The Housing Authority funds that through a grant, but it does not come through my office. And then we have the State Rental Assistance Program, which we commonly refer to as SRAP. This is a state-funded program. It runs about $4 million a year. We get an additional $3 million through the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health for their clients, but it is not federally funded housing. It's similar in the process to vouchers, and we'll go over that here. So Delaware State Housing Authority is one of 5 housing authorities, and we administer public housing and most of our vouchers in Kent and Sussex counties. The types of vouchers we have are family unification vouchers. We have 50 of those. Those are for either youth exiting foster care or for families that have a child in foster care or in danger of being placed in foster care, and housing is pretty much the last hurdle they need in order to keep that from happening or to get their child out of foster care. We have the 811 Mainstream Voucher Program, which is 65 units. And that is for individuals that are less than 62 years of age, but have a disability, and they're referred to us through different state agencies. We have the VASH Veteran Voucher Program. This is coordinated between HUD and the VA hospital up in Wilmington. We have 25 vouchers in Kent and Sussex counties for that. The VASH folks, they will send us referrals for their clients, and we'll provide them with a voucher, and they can go out and look for a unit. Something relatively new based on the COVID funding that came in last year, emergency housing vouchers. We only have 38 of those in Kent and Sussex counties. They are pretty similar to our normal voucher standard. And then we have our regular all-purpose housing choice vouchers. We also administer one HUD multifamily development for the elderly and disabled, and we do 2 rental assistance demonstration programs, projects, one in Dover, Liberty Court, and we're just converting our former public housing units in Smyrna and Middletown. We've got Holly Square in Middletown's 25 units of elderly, or 24 units of elderly, and then we've got Peach Circle, which is 32 units of elderly and disabled, and then we got a family site on the other side of Smyrna called McLean Gardens, which is 50 units of both family and elderly. We also manage the public housing units that we've got left in the remainder of Kent, Sussex counties. So we are apartment, in addition to providing vouchers, we are also apartment managers. So we do know what landlords go through in being a landlord, and also following the Delaware Landlord Tenant Code. We are one of the, I think there's about 45 agencies out of 3,900 in the United States that's considered to be a moving to work agency. We started this program in 1999, and it allows us greater flexibility in dealing with the voucher program and also our public housing through either administrative or actual processes. And we concentrate on self-sufficiency for work-eligible families. About 35% of all of our clients in public housing and housing choice vouchers are work eligible. They have their subsidies limited to 5 years. They can get a 2-year extension if they're not successful in 5 years. During that 5 years, they go through an education program, they go through self-sufficiency, they go through financial literacy classes. They have to meet certain guidelines as far as the work hours. They work from year to year. It starts at 20 hours and it works all the way up to 30, 35 hours at the end of the 5-year period. During that time, a certain amount of what they pay in for rent gets put into an escrow account. If they successfully complete the program in 5 years, they can access 100% of that escrow account, of which 60% has to be used for a housing related expense. And then 40% of that is used at their personal discretion. This escrow program has led to a large amount of home ownership opportunities for our tenants, people from public housing and housing choice vouchers. We probably have more people going from subsidized housing to home ownership than most other public housing agencies. I think that the total is at over, since 1999, we've probably had about 400 to 500 of our families go into home ownership, and they've used these escrow funds for down payments. They've used them for settlement costs. They've used them for a lot of different things to get to home ownership. And then those that go into, they're not going into home ownership, they can still access their escrow if they're going into non-subsidized rental housing. It can be used for their security deposit. It can be used for prepayment of utilities, prepayment of rent. It can be used for security or for security deposits for their utilities, things like that. Our applicants have to meet a minimum income requirement that's set by HUD. They must pass resident screening policies for criminal history, landlord references, and this is for public housing, our housing choice vouchers, and our RAD developments. And they also have to pass citizenship requirements. They have to be either a citizen or have eligible immigration status. We have waiting list preferences. Since we specifically work in Kent and Sussex counties for most of our programs, we have local preferences that you must live and or work in Kent and Sussex counties. That does not include our site in Middletown called Holly Square, and it doesn't include our HUD multifamily in Lewis, which is called Hewling Cove and Hewling Cove Annex. They have to be working 20 hours per week, and this is for work eligible. This is not for elderly or disabled. Elderly disabled preference, they must be 62 years of age or are disabled according to HUD's definition of disability. HUD's definition of disability is not the same definition as used by Social Security or SSI. So we do go through a verification process on that. And then if you're a veteran and you had a good discharge from the service, you get a preference too. As of March 4th, and I didn't update this because it's not changed that much, we had over 13,000 people on our waiting list for both public housing and housing choice vouchers. We closed our waiting list on March 18th because the waiting list was so extensive, and we're right now the average wait for a person on the waiting list is anywhere from 36 to 60 months, depending on their preference and depending on unit turnover. So, as I mentioned before, there are several different federal voucher programs, our regular housing choice voucher, family unification. For our regular housing choice vouchers, we only use those in Kent and Sussex. For the family unification program, we do service all three. We got special permission to service Newcastle County and Kent and Sussex. Our emergency housing vouchers are in Kent and Sussex counties only, but Wilmington Housing Authority and Newcastle County also have emergency housing vouchers. Our VASH vouchers, we have about 25, and we use those specifically in Kent and Sussex counties. But again, Newcastle County, the Wilmington Housing Authority, they have VASH vouchers also. And then our 811 mainstream vouchers, they can be utilized in all three counties. So a lot of people want to know how we screen clients, and the screening criteria can be different from PHA to PHA because HUD allows some variation. But we check for criminal background screening. We use a matrix that identifies the level of the crime, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor. It also identifies whether it is a violent crime or a non-violent crime, and things like that. We also check the sex offender registry. We also check to make sure that the client does not owe any debts to any other federal housing programs or PHAs, public housing agencies. We do not screen for credit. We're not allowed to by HUD. It's against HUD regulations. But we do encourage landlords to screen for criminal, credit, prior landlord, as long as they evenly apply their screening policy to all their applicants, whether they're a voucher holder or not. We encourage landlords to check with prior landlords. And I tell people, just don't go to the first one that's on the list. Go back a few years. That way you can identify not how they're behaving now, but also check previous behaviors. To be quite honest with you, if a landlord may want to get rid of an issue, they may not tell you about it. So that's why you should go back further than just one landlord reference. And like I said, as long as you apply your screening criteria evenly throughout all your applicants, you can treat our clients the same as you would any other applicant. So the state rental assistance program, we developed that in 2010, 2011, and we do not have a waiting list for it. It is through a referral process provided by the several DHS, Division of Health and Social Service divisions. This is state funded, so we get referrals from the Division of Services for Children, Youth, and Families, the Division of Social Services for the Aging and Adults with Physical Disabilities, the Division for Developmental Disabilities, the Division for Medicaid and Medical Assistance, Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. And we also have a very small homeworks program for families that are in these three school districts, Christina, Capital, Seaford School District, that have that are homeless, and they have to be bused into the school district. We are not allowed, and this is how government works. We were told by the feds that since this was part of a settlement to a suit with the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, that we cannot screen our tenants for criminal background. And again, like the vouchers, we do not screen them for prior landlord. That is something that has to be done by the current landlord that is looking to rent to them. And the same suggestions go ahead. You can do criminal credit, you can do landlord references, you can even do home visits on any of these applicants, as long as you're consistent and you do it across the board for everybody. So each division refers, and they set their own priorities for their clients. All we do is we make sure that they're income eligible. We make sure that we've got all the documentation, birth certificates, Social Security cards, things like that. So again, we do not perform any screening such as criminal history or prior landlord history. This is utilized statewide. The majority of our SRAP participants elect to live in Newcastle County. As of earlier this year, we have 741 SRAP units leased statewide, and we have about 82 vouchers that are issued and are on the street looking for units. And like I said before, we get $4 million from the state, and DSAM kicks in another $3 million for some of their clients. So how do voucher programs work? Like I said, the landlord screens voucher holders as they would any other applicants. If a voucher holder is selected, they have to complete with the landlord a request for tenancy approval form and send it back to us. We review the request for the amount of the contract rent. We look at the utilities that the tenant will be paying out of their own pocket. We look at the bedroom size to make sure it matches the voucher size. At least, it's no smaller than the voucher size. We don't want to overcrowd the units. We look to see, ownership. A lot of times we have to have proof of ownership. So once we do that, we figure out what the cost is for the utilities that the tenant will have to pay. We use an allowance system that we update once a year for all 3 counties, based on water, sewer, electric, propane, natural gas, whether the tenant provides the appliances, if the unit's air conditioned, then the tenant pays for the electricity for that, trash removal, if the tenant pays for that. And we take that amount and we back it out of the contract rent. And at that point, it normally cannot exceed the amount of the payment standard. The payment standard is given to us through the FMR, fair market rents by HUD. And we are allowed by HUD to go either 90% of the FMR up to 110% of the FMR. The majority of our payment standards at 105 and 110%. So once we find out that the unit is acceptable, we schedule an inspection that normally happens within 10 days. We have started going back out and doing our initial inspections in person. We're still doing our annual recertification inspections via, remotely, through paperwork and through email. If the unit passes our inspection, we go ahead and we can do initial leases and contracts on the spot for 1 year, and they automatically go on a month-to-month basis based on the, at the time of the anniversary of the initial lease signing. The tenant will pay a portion of the rent. They normally pay anywhere from 30 to 35% of their adjusted gross income, or monthly adjusted gross income. And DSHA will pay the rest. We pay it normally through direct deposit. And normally our payments are there before the first day of the month. So we're usually pretty good about getting payments out to you at least a day or two before the month starts. Voucher participants are recertified annually, including an inspection of the rental unit, which normally takes place between 90 and 120 days before the anniversary of the initial lease. Landlord agents, if we do find any problems with the unit, the landlord rental agents are notified of the issues and given 30 days to make necessary repairs. And extensions to that 30-day period can be requested. We do ask for some documentation. For instance, there's a broken window, or let's say that there is, a door that needs to be replaced, an entry door. Especially in today's world, you may not be able to go and get one right off the shelf. So we've had landlords showing where we're replacing the windows, and here's the information, and we're not going to be able to get them for 2 months. So we will work with landlords as best as we can to extend that inspection reinspection date. If a unit fails and it is a life-threatening problem and it's not fixed by the landlord, there's no extensions that are requested, HUD requires us to abate the payment. And when we abate the payment, there is no retroactive once the unit passes our inspection. So it's very, very important that repairs be made. And if you need to request an extension, request it as soon as possible so that we can work around having to abate you. We do not like abating our landlords, but we don't have a choice when it comes to HUD's requirements. At the time of the annual rent increase or annual recertification process, landlords can ask for an annual rent increase. We normally send out our letters 90 to 120 days before the annual recertification process ends, so that we know whether or not the landlord wants to request a rent increase. And then we ask them to send us in information. We don't ask you to justify it. We do look at the rent increase, and a lot of times the amount of the rent increase is going to be borne by the tenant to a certain extent. And the biggest thing that I think misconception about any voucher, whether it's SRAP or HUD vouchers, is that you treat, as a landlord or an agent, you treat that client, that voucher holder, like you would treat any other person that leases a unit in the state of Delaware. If they're late on the rent payment, let's say that they're only paying $50 a month in rent and they're late, go ahead, send them the proper notice, the 5-day notice for rent. Go ahead and send that, and whenever you take action like that, you send a CC to us. That way we can contact the client and say, we've gotten a notice from your landlord that your rent is past due. Please be advised that this could be a lease violation if you don't take care of it. And if the landlord takes you to court and wins, you lose your voucher, period. Same thing with other lease violations. If they've got unauthorized individuals in the unit, if they've got an unusual amount of damages that far exceed the regular wear and tear, if they have an unauthorized pet, anything that you would send a lease violation notice on to any other client, you do the same procedure with ours. The only addition is you send us a copy of it so that we can get on them about it too. And I just see, I think I've misspelled correspondence. So these are the payment standards, and I've only included them for Kent and Sussex counties because I could fit them all on one page. In Newcastle County, the payment standards are under us. They call it small. It's called small. And that's what they do is they give you a different payment standard by each zip code. So far, Kent and Sussex counties, DSHA has not adopted that for Kent and Sussex counties. So we have two payment standards here. We have the normal payment standard, which is base payment standard. It's based on 105% of the FMR. It shows you efficiencies, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. And that price includes the cost of utilities. And like I said, we have to back out the cost of any tenant paid utilities to make sure that the rent meets the contract rent that the landlord wishes to offer. And then the second set here at the bottom is if the person lives in an area of opportunity. And I tried to copy my area of opportunity map so that you folks could see it, but it wouldn't copy over into a slide presentation. So If anybody's interested, I could send it to them via email. But this is based on 110% of the payments or the fair market rent. So as you can see, we can offer a little bit more if they're within an area of opportunity. Also, we can offer more rent if the client is disabled and has a need for an accessibility feature, a ramp, a large bathroom that's got handbars on it, a roll-in shower, undercut cabinets in the kitchen and the bathroom for somebody that may be in a wheelchair. We can go beyond our payment standard for that because those units are not that readily accessible for our clients. And 70% of our clients are elderly or disabled. This is another program that we have. We have been trying to get it off the ground. We wanted to start it with our public housing. It is available for those that have vouchers, but it's with us and the Department of Corrections, and it's to try to allow individuals that are getting out of prison for, I think, mostly nonviolent situations, to be able to live with a family without being totally added on to the lease or to the voucher program, the calculations, to allow them to get a chance for a year or 2 years to get their act together and get to be back being an important part of our normal population. Right now, we are still working with it. We have not received any applications for either our public housing or for our voucher housing. So I just wanted to throw this in there to give you an idea that this is a program. It's not operating right now, but it is a program for us. Normally when our waiting list office is open, or it's open, but when our waiting list is open, they can go online through our website. They can get a copy. They can put their application online, or they can print out a paper copy and send it to us via email or fax or whatever. But right now we're not accepting any more applications for our public housing or housing choice vouchers because our waiting list is so large. We want to get through that a bit and then be able to open it up sometime in the future. This does not apply to SRAP, family unification, VASH, or 811 mainstream, or emergency housing vouchers, because they're all based on a referral basis. So we work with the referral agencies and they know when to send us applications. Here are the income guidelines for all 3 counties. We have 30% of median, 50% of median, and 80% of median. And then this is a chart that shows you all 5 housing authorities in the state of Delaware. Of course, we're in Kent and Sussex counties. Then you have Dover Housing Authority, which just encompasses the city limits of Dover. You've got Newcastle County Department of Community Affairs, which handles most of Newcastle County. Wilmington Housing Authority for the city of Wilmington. And then you've got the Newark Housing Authority in Newark, Delaware. This just gives you information about each of these. Wilmington Housing Authority operates public housing and voucher programs. Newcastle County is just voucher programs. They do not have any public housing. Newark Housing Authority has both public housing, rental assistance demonstration, and housing choice voucher programs. And then Dover Housing Authority has public housing and housing choice voucher programs. One of the things we use to tell our participants where to look for housing, of course, we tell them to look in the newspapers, you know, to do searches online and this, that, and the other. But several years ago, all the major public housing agencies, Newcastle County, the state of Delaware, we got together and we started a online housing search website. It's run by a nonprofit, Social Serve, and we tell all of our folks that one of the places they should search is DelawareHousingSearch.org. It's they can tell them either online, or they could give them a phone call, what area they want to look in, whether or not it accepts vouchers, whether or not it's got tenant-based subsidy or a site-based subsidy. And it also allows landlords the ability to go online and list their units, to also add photos of their units, and it's free. So the idea is to hopefully try to connect people that are looking for housing, even those that may not have vouchers, to those that have housing. And that's pretty much the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Chris. That was a fantastic presentation. Give me 1 second here, though. There we go. All right, I think everybody's on the screen now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I do have a few here I want to cover. What is it meant by area opportunity? Could you dive into that a little more?
An area of opportunity is an area that has better schools, that have better transportation modes, that allow a client to live in an area where they may have a better opportunity. There may be more businesses there, maybe closer to hospitals, things like that. And we use it in the tax credit world to determine the best places to place tax credits. There are a lot of them in Newcastle County. There aren't that many of them in Kent County. And then, for instance, down in Sussex County, pretty much the entire east side of the county is an area of opportunity because of the schools, because of the work that's available, because of the services that are available, the quality of life, libraries, and things like that.
Okay. Another question that came through, and it deals with the inspections. And I know I've heard comments from our members about the inspection process. Could you dive into that? What exactly is one of these inspections, and what's the real process? You said 10 days. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, COVID has affected our process because for a long time, for a while, for 2 years, we've been doing this remotely, where we have landlords send us in photos of the unit, they sign off on a certification statement and things like that. That's kind of taken a little longer because we have to go back and forth. But the whole idea of the matter is that we have to make sure that it meets housing quality standards, HQS, and their standards for safe, sanitary, and decent housing. They're not standards, they're standards such as making sure that all the windows operate and they stay open, making sure that they lock, making sure that there are smoke detectors where there are supposed to be smoke detectors, making sure there are no tripping hazards, making sure that the front door is secure and the back door is secure, making sure that the water heater has a discharge line on it and is in good condition, making sure that there's a central heating or central air conditioning system, or mostly central heating. Air conditioning is not required. They're minimal standards. What they don't include is if you go in and you've got 65 colors of tile in the bathroom and it looks so gaudy that you don't even want to go in there, it doesn't cover that. That's something for the tenant to determine whether or not it passes their desired need. If you go in and there are 15 types of carpeting, as long as there are 15 types of tile on the floor, as long as there's not a tripping hazard, we don't look for that. We do look to make sure that there's lid paint, that there's lid-based paint. If there, I mean, not that there is, but we have to, HUD tells us any peeling paint has to be handled like it's lid-based paint. So what our inspectors do when they go out, they go room by room. They have a checklist that they have to go through. They check to see, like I said, the doors, the windows. They check to make sure that there's no problems with the flooring as far as it being soft or having any issues. We look around the outside of the building for rotten wood. We look for how the condition is on the roof. We go down in the basement to see if there's any mold or mildew. So we're basically looking for the same things, but at a minimal level that most people would want to look at. So right now we are I think we're within 10 days of getting that RFTA and being able to do an inspection. And of course, it all depends on whether or not we have to go back and forth on the price, or if there are things missing. Like, for instance, we get requests for tenancy approvals that don't show what the utilities are, or it may not show what the age of the building is, or how many bedrooms, or even the address. So normally, if the RFTA is good, we can get it back in 10 days. We use our own personal inspectors. They're housing authority employees. We have 2 for the voucher program, the housing choice voucher program, the federal program, and we have 2 for the statewide rental assistance program. So I know that other agencies, Newcastle County and City of Wilmington, may use a combination of their own staff or using an outside contractor. And I think Rob can talk to that on how his department does the inspections.
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, for the annuals and the re-inspections, we are using McCrate Associates, and they're a third-party outside agency, and they inspect to the housing quality standards, is what Chris was speaking of. For the initial inspections, which are what we call the inspections where the RIFTA has been handed in to us, our own inspection staff handling those.
Okay, thank you. So one of the questions that just came up is, why is the AC not required?
It's a tenant choice. HUD considers it to be a minimal requirement. Now, there are some folks out there that they know that they have a health issue, that they need air conditioning, and they're going to have to look for a unit that comes with air conditioning. But you know, air conditioning is not, it does not meet HQS requirements.
On the topic of the waiting list, what does that really look like? So you said 13,000 are currently on the list, and I know part of it, you said a large part is the elderly and the disabled. So what's the list? Can you give us a better idea what the list is made up of?
Yeah.
If there's a real need for the accessible apartments, you know, how great is that?
If you want to hold on for a minute, I can bring up my report from last week. Because I do a weekly report with this.
And then I guess with that question, is there then a priority for specific, I don't want to say types of people, but you know what I mean?
Elderly and working have the same preference. The only way to get kicked up is if they are like a veteran who is elderly, or a veteran that has a working preference.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Okay, as of last week, we had 13,790 people on the waiting list. Of those, 9,438 people were work eligible. 4,352 people were elderly or disabled. Right now, I think our 1 and 2 bedrooms are having the hardest time finding units.
Okay.
Because you know, they're just not, you know, for most profit-driven agencies, they want the larger units to make more money. Plus, with COVID and the increases in rents being charged throughout the state, they, I think, have been affected more. But as you can see, was it probably, you know, 1/4 of all of our clients are elderly and disabled. I mean, on the waiting list. And the majority of the other bedroom sizes are 2s and 3s for the families. We occasionally get somebody that's got a 4-bedroom or needs a 4-bedroom voucher, but the majority of, we've seen family sizes kind of decrease over the past few years.
What are some of the hesitancies you hear from landlords? I know there's a constant discussion, especially at Legislative Hall, about encouraging more landlords to use the program. What are some of the hesitancies that you've heard directly for why they don't want to be involved?
I think part of it, they don't want to go through the federal program. They don't want to go through the paperwork. We try to make the paperwork as low as possible. I think there's also a misconception that they have to treat these folks differently than anybody else, and they need to treat them as they would any other tenant. And like I said, if they're late paying their rent, whether it's $25 or whether it's $150 or whatever, you send them that 5-day notice. And if they don't do what you need to do in 5 days, you treat them like you would any other tenant. You either take them to court or whatever else your agency does. Common complaint is, oh, they tear up the units. Well, that happens with a lot of different clients. Our clients pay a full security deposit. They have to. So you've got a full security deposit, but the biggest problem with that is that we find that happens when the landlord doesn't set the standard on how often they're going to come through for an inspection of the rental unit and how the landlord cares for the rental unit. If you've got a client and you train them from the beginning that the landlord's going to be there once a month or once every 2 months to take a look at the unit, to assess any tenant damages, that they're going to charge them for any tenant damages on a regular basis, that they're going to take action in court in case they're late or that they've got lease violations. If you set that standard, you're going to have a better success with any tenant, not just ours. We have some folks that have been on the program that were from out of state. You know, that they may have a couple of units here in Dover or a couple of units in Wilmington, but they live in Philadelphia or Indiana or something. Those folks that never come to their units, you know, it's an investment. Mm-hmm. They never come to their units, never look it over. They don't hold their clients to the legal requirements of the Delaware Landlord Tenant Code. They're the ones that usually have a problem.
One question that just came in: why is it the landlord's job to train the tenants?
What I mean by train the tenants, I'm not telling you. I'm saying you have to set the mode. You have to set the expectations. And you got to remember, some of these folks may have come from developments that didn't have regular floors. I mean, down in Sussex County, there are still places where trailers are falling apart and you've got dirt floors. But I'm not telling you to train them on how to take care of the unit. I'm telling them to let them know what your expectations is as a landlord, that you're going to be looking at the unit to take care of it, that you're going to be inspecting it for damages, that you're going to hold them responsible.
Does anybody else have any questions? You can wave your hand. I can unmute you. Monica, you got a question? Give me 1 second. I gotta find you here. There you go, Monica.
I was just trying to type it in. How do you handle when you have a voucher system like that and you have more than one participant moving in that's not on that voucher? I mean, history has always been, if you take Section 8, they move everybody and their brother into the unit.
Well, number one is that when they move in, the people that are supposed to be on the lease are on the lease. They're on the HAP contract.
Okay.
Okay. If it's reported to us that they have somebody living there that's not supposed to be on the lease, mm-hmm. We immediately, the more information we can get about that person, the better. But we send them a program violation letter. We try to list the person that's in there. We tell them that they have to provide us with documentation where that person lives, you know, either through, legal documents, mail, through driver's license, through insurance certificates, through car titles and stuff like that. because they're stealing from the taxpayer, because if they wanted to have them added on legally, we'd have to do the criminal background check, we'd have to do the screening. The landlord would have to give their permission for this person to move in. The landlord could screen them the same way. But what's happening is that they're not putting any money in, and they're there living for free. So it's our interest to try to reduce that as much as possible. We take every step we can. Now, granted, we're not investigators. We look into it as far as we can, but we are not the police as far as having all of these methods of investigation at our hands. So we do try to take lessons. And if we find out that somebody is living there and they've certified that they're not, and we've gotten false information, then we terminate their subsidy.
And is the landlord notified that you're going to terminate their subsidy?
Yes,
Yeah.
we send out CCs of everything. For instance, if we send a letter out about a recertification and the client doesn't do their annual recertification, when we send them a notice that, about termination, we send that to the landlord. So we try to, as much as we can, we notify the landlord in everything that would affect them.
When you were talking about the program where somebody has been incarcerated, you said that's not in effect right now, or you're working on that?
We haven't had any applications, and we were trying to start it within our own public housing, and the coordination hasn't been there with Department of Corrections.
Because we did have an instance this year where we had a lady that's been running from us for quite some time. Her son was released from prison, and she wanted to put him in the house with her, and the owner would not add him to the lease. And she was told that he had to be on the lease. He didn't want to do that. So if that program is available, I don't know if he was released yet or not, because he couldn't be released unless he had somewhere to go.
Well, the thing of it is that the program that releases them, the way the program works is it's for individuals that they've had a prior relationship with, like a grandmother or grandfather,
Right.
a girlfriend, a wife, the mother of their children, whatever. It's not for just general putting them up everywhere. The whole idea behind it is that we could put them in to a unit in public housing. We're helping the Department of Corrections out and we're helping the person out to get back on a stable foothold. But right now, our referrals haven't been there.
This was he was wanting to move into his mother's property. He had been incarcerated for, I think, like 10 years.
But it is up to the landlord. The landlord has a say in this. And if the landlord doesn't feel comfortable, we don't want them doing it.
Well, we were okay with him, living in the unit. He just didn't want to add him to the lease because it was supposedly only a temporary thing. So if your program would allow for them, like you said, a year or two or whatever, for them to move in there temporarily, our owner would have been okay with that, but he just didn't want to add him to our lease.
Let me jump in here because I promise everybody this is only an hour and I got 5 minutes left. Sorry, Monica. I do want to ask Rosette. She has a question here. Give me 1 second, Rosette. All right, you should be good to go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Morning. Yep.
Okay. Hi. It's actually pronounced Rosita.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I get it all the time. But I had a question in regard to somebody that maybe in a unit, the housing voucher is accepted, but for whatever reason, the landlord is not going to renew their lease. And so they go to look for other housing that accepts the voucher, but they're not able to. Does that put them in danger of losing that voucher? Or are there any things that can be done to step in and help them find housing that will accept the voucher?
What we've been finding is that we normally give our clients 60 days with 30-day extensions to try to find another unit. We tell them to go ahead and give their notice as far as in advance about to try to find a unit so that they can immediately go from one unit to the next. But right now it's difficult to find a unit. It's difficult to find a unit that passes our inspection. Sometimes it's difficult to find one that's within the cost guidelines. So we try to work with the client. We try to give them any sources that we know of. And we a lot of times send them to a social service agency to see if there's somebody that can help them with the search. We don't have staff here. We don't have the staffing to help people with individual searches. My voucher staff for the federal program is only 5. My voucher staff for the SRAP program is only 5. And we're literally talking about maybe between the two of them, 18 to 2,000 vouchers. So we just don't have the staffing to provide constant, search help.
All right, thank you. So Chris, Robert, if you guys have any final thoughts, we're going to be able to wrap it up right on time. Go ahead, you can unmute.
I just want to point out that Newcastle County has a housing choice voucher home ownership program that basically takes the client from renting and the county paying the current landlord a rental amount and flips it towards paying for a mortgage. It's something that the clients can participate in 15 to 30 years, depending on their qualification and situation. So it is something that we offer. Otherwise, everything that Chris talked about, we offer basically the same thing, few nuances, but otherwise, same as Chris said.
And Chris, before you close up there was one question here. Are mobile homes eligible?
Yes. And not only are mobile homes eligible, but there's a very weird formula for mobile home lots. So if we've got a client that owns their own mobile home, but they want to get housing assistance to rent the lot, there is a calculation for that. But the HUD calculation doesn't keep up with real-time costs. So a lot of times that doesn't work. But yes, we do. A lot of our, especially in Sussex counties, a good number of our units are mobile homes.
All righty. Any final thoughts there, Chris?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you to you both. I really appreciate you taking your time. Chris, I guess congratulations on retirement. But I want to thank all of our members for being here today as well. Again, our next session's in August. And that's everything for today. So have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Take care.